So we're looking at the phosphorus cycle now. Again, I'm in the content library, module 1, and I'm in phosphorus cycle. I've got 3 tasks that I have to do. I have to draw a rough diagram, I have to identify any sources and sinks, and I have to identify where humans can impact on this cycle. So scrolling down, I've got a very rough diagram just here. So it's pretty similar to the dude's diagram in the video before, where I've got phosphorus. Essentially where we find all phosphorus is in the ground. So I know that phosphorus in the ground is always going to be my sink. Okay, so I've got that down there. And then everything else in terms of where, what processes we can get phosphorus from is I've got up here, I've got rain falling on some rock. Okay, when rock cycles through our environment, it causes rock that hasn't necessarily seen the surface of the earth for a long time and pushes it up towards the surface. So when we push rock up towards the surface, it opens itself up to erosion. In that process of uplift, that's also going to be part of that process. Okay, so I wouldn't say uplift is necessarily a source, but I would say that erosion is a source, because when we erode rock, that's what forms our soil. And when the phosphorus from our rocks erode into soil, that soil then becomes available for trees to access, so it goes up into this tree. It also becomes available for things that animals eat, and that's how animals get phosphorus. So it comes from erosion down into the soil. When it rains again from the soil, what can happen is some of that phosphorus can actually go down our rivers, which you can see here. So down here where I've got my runoff, you can see that some of that phosphorus eventually makes its way into the ocean, and that phosphorus is then eaten by phytoplankton, or things that can photosynthesize in the ocean, which are then eaten by fish and whales and all those things, the big things in the ocean. And when pretty much anything in the ocean dies, what happens is it sinks to the bottom of the ocean. That then gets compacted and turns into more rock. Okay, so it's often some kind of carbonate because it's bones and stuff. So that then goes across here and turns into rock, which becomes our sink. That's the same for land animals as well. You've got animals like cows eating the phosphorus in different types of grass. That cow is then pooping it out, which also goes into the earth, or is kind of decomposed by decomposers and then goes into the earth. And then this cow also can die and turn into phosphorus and go back into the earth. So you can see most of it is going into that sink of the earth. Now, where humans mess it up, you can see up here I've written humans mining for fertilizer. Okay, so this is a source. I don't know why my OneNote's doing this, but where this source is this kind of caterpillar truck is digging up phosphorus, and you can see the phosphorus. I'll use my mouse. You can see the phosphorus right here. Okay, so that phosphorus then gets deposited onto crops, because phosphorus is what plants need to grow. They also need a few other things, but often it can be the limiting factor for different types of plants, and normally it's in different types of fertilizer. Now, humans are notorious for over fertilizing. Okay, now when humans over fertilize, what it does is the plant can't absorb all the phosphorus in the soil, and when it rains, it actually leaches out the phosphorus from the soil and goes into basically runs off into streams and rivers. So we're getting an over phosphorus, like too much phosphorus in our crops. That then gets leached out by rain and runs off again. You can bring it down here, run off down here, okay? And that can cause really bad things in our oceans and our rivers, where phytoplankton and different type of photosynthesizing organisms get a massive amount of phosphorus, which means they grow to a really high amount. Then they die, then they use up all the oxygen in the water, because dying takes up oxygen, and then fish can die because there's not enough oxygen in the water. We'll get to that in a bit, but what the most important thing here is that humans can add phosphorus into the cycle, which can cause adverse impacts into waterways mostly. And that's how the phosphorus cycle works, remembering that there is only really one sink and there is only really one source, which is erosion.